Well, friends, we've made it to another spring and my garden is definitely showing it. I've got artichokes here that are ready to harvest. I've got so many calendula and nasturtium flowers everywhere I look, and there are birds chirping and jumping across every single tree. So now that it's spring, what do we need to do about our garden? There's actually a lot that you could do right now that will have massive impact in your future garden, especially right now in the springtime. So today I'm going to share with you guys some of the small things that I do, some of the really big things that I do that are much more involved at this point in the year to make sure that this spring is better than the last one. And every single year, that's our goal. We want to get better as gardeners. We want to produce more food. So let me show you some of the things that I'm working on this year to make sure that I accomplish those goals. And the first one is actually going to be dividing some plants that they've been a little bit stagnant sitting over the winter this whole time. So let's go take a peek over there. So the plants I want to show you guys are right through here. Usually I walk through this section, but currently it is a nasturtium forest and I can't say that I'm mad about it. The other thing I'm definitely not mad about is this Valencia orange, which has the most intoxicating aroma around. The bees are loving it. But even right here where I'm standing, I'm getting hit like a truck with this delicious, fragrant aroma. I'm so excited to see it. I'm so excited to smell it. And also, the herb bed is looking really good. I have the French tarragon coming back in. It always looks super weird and funny when it first grows back, but it is tarragon. I know that for sure. Over here, I have my Mediterranean herb bed, which is littered up with thyme and also things like oregano and lavender and sage. So there's also this big pile of rocks here. You might be wondering what that is, and that's going to be mulch for the native garden. But the plant that I want to show you guys is actually over here. It's not this one, it's this one right here. So by now you might have guessed that this is my mint plant, and it's actually my pineapple mint, one of the only pineapple mints I have left. So what I'm going to do here is remove this nasturtium. Don't worry, as you can see, I've got plenty. I'm going to pick out some of these grassy weeds that I don't want to actually spread around because it's a little bit easier to do it now. But some other plants that you might want to consider splitting up, dividing at this point in year are things like yarrow, for example, that bunches up very nicely. Lemongrass is another great contender. You could do even chives, other types of herbs. Even salvia plants can be divided by just cutting up their roots essentially and splitting them apart. So with mint, it's even easier because if I even just take this right here, I could put it in potting mix and that will definitely grow. So we'll actually go ahead and keep that one. But the main goal here is that once something's been growing in a container for a long time and you feel like it's not really doing its best anymore, it's very likely that there's some rotting going on. There's a lack of nutrients. So by removing this plant, what we're going to do is actually remove a lot of the soil, divide it up. We could propagate it into other pots if we want. In this case, I really don't need any more than this one pot of mint because I have 3 others. So let's go ahead and pop this out, see what it looks like, and we'll talk about why it's so important you do this. What you're seeing here are all those roots wrapping around the outside, as I mentioned. That's great. Those are actually propagations. From here, a new mint plant can erupt out of any one of these little nodes that are hanging out the edge here. And what I'm seeing is that this bottom section is covered in all sorts of fine roots. Now, there is actually still a lot of soil in here, but what I'm considering is that there's possibly not enough drainage in this soil. One of the things that could happen with mint is that it's very prone to rotting. It could grow and rot. It could also rot and rot. So it's one of these annoying plants. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to remove that lower bit of soil. And then what I want to do is also clean up the top, because up here there's a whole bunch of swirling roots all spinning around in there, taking up space. And the plant is essentially choking itself out. So by now you might be thinking Jacques lost his mind, he just killed this plant. I did not. This is totally normal with dividing plants. You kind of tear them apart and you put them back together and they always do better. They're definitely going to appreciate us for doing this, even though it looks like I'm destroying its world right now. And it will be a little bit sad at the beginning, but if we keep some amount of soil attached to the roots, like this little section down here, they'll be much better off. So I'm also going to untangle these because I don't want them to continue to just spiral around. As I mentioned, you could literally just lay down one of these root chunks and they will grow from that. So this part right here, this will be actually a great propagation. It's not my pineapple mint, so I'm gonna take it apart because right now I'm mostly interested in propagating more of this pineapple mint. So now I've come down to this one chunk here, and then I've got this string of roots on this side as well. So that's going to be the 2 parts we put back in the pot. What I'm going to do now is I will be putting some of the soil back. I don't want to just waste it, and it's also full of mint roots, so I'm scared of actually moving it anywhere else in my garden because mint, as I mentioned, is very easy to propagate. So what I'll do here is I will put some of this old soil down at the bottom, but I'm also going to mix in a bunch of this new soil which I just mixed up, and I added a bunch of extra pumice and vermiculite so that it has more drainage and aeration and keep that mint happier. I also added a little bit of fertilizer in there just so that we could juice this plant up as we're going into this spring season where everything just wants to grow. So let's get some more soil back in there. So this little section here, it's all root and then it has the growth up top. So what I'm going to do here is shove this root section into the pot of soil. There we go. It's now in that soil mix. And then I'm going to put the plant expression itself near the top. Then what we're going to do is layer some more of these roots in. Anything that I know for sure is pineapple sage, I'm just going to shove it in there. And actually this one has a lot of rot on it. So I'm going to break that, put in that stem. Anytime you see the roots sort of looking brown or black, like right here, for example, there's white, brown, and black next to each other. The brown parts are a little bit of rot. At least that's usually the case. So then we're going to take this big old chunk here, and I'm going to plop it just like that, guys. It's very, very easy when you're doing something like mint. Now with these other plants that I mentioned, even lemongrass, you could tear that thing apart. It's not going to mind, it'll be just fine. So a couple more little propagations here, shove them in. And then since again, this is mint and you could root any portion of the plant, what we could do is just bury this in. We don't even have to make sure it's perfect in here. It's going to look really dumb for probably about, I don't know, 2 to 3 weeks. And then all of a sudden it will take off and it'll be a happy mint plant once again. With all of its roots detangled, it can now spiral all over again and find a new path that hopefully will make it last a little bit longer. So that is how we split up and replant a mint plant. I know this looks like I just massacred this guy, but I assure you, it'll be just fine. So here we are, obviously, as I mentioned, it looks pitiful now, but what we've done is we've refreshed all the soil. We've removed a crazy amount of roots here. So all of this was just jamming it up, stopping it from being able to grow again because they were strangling each other in the pot. So with this now ready, this is going to pop off like crazy this spring and should give me mint all year round. And by the way, this isn't just for plants that need dividing. I do stuff like this to anything that seems to have stalled out in a container. So earlier I did it to a lime tree. Last year I did it to a strawberry guava. This is just one of those things that every once in a while you need to get in there, you need to take a look at the soil and you need to refresh it. So this guy is much better off for it. And any plant you really do it to, it's probably going to do much better. If not this year, definitely in the next year. And now what I want to do is show you my native garden. So in this garden bed here, I have a whole bunch of native endemic to San Diego plants. Now, right here, this one is not. There's also a bird of paradise back there that's not native to San Diego, but everything else you see in this bed is native to this region. So I have the island alum rot, which is this guy right here. The other one was flowering. We have a bunch of different types of yarrows. We have the purple feather grass, which is a native to California. Then we have a ceanothus there, a manzanita, the coyote mint. This is actually the only mint that I'll place in ground, and that's because in this area there's no irrigation. So in the summertime it's all dried up and there's really no chance of this guy spreading. It's been here for a year and it's still in the same place. So we also have some creeping ceanothus here that is in bloom, which looks lovely. And then we have a big old ceanothus here that attracts all sorts of bees that come visit these wonderful bluish purple flowers. Massive point south sage down here at the bottom. And anyway, what's my point? My point is that right now is actually a really good time to get some native plants in the ground. It might be a little bit late depending on where you are. Like in San Diego, it's really pushing it right now, getting them in the ground, but we are still getting rain. The ground is still soft. It's not hard and dry yet. So there's definitely still opportunity to get natives in the ground. I'm gonna actually plant one right now. So let me show you what that looks like. So here's the plant we're putting in. It is a snowball ceanothus, which is a white flowered ceanothus. We got this at a native plant sale from the California Native Plant Society, San Diego. They do an annual sale every time. I believe it was in the fall. So we could have planted it then, but of course we didn't. We've just been keeping it alive in this tiny pot. So now let's figure out where we're gonna put it. Actually, we had a few plants that didn't make it because we planted this garden technically in the summer last year, which was really not the best time, but almost everything survived except for one plant right over here. So here's the former stem of that plant. It's definitely fully rotted away and I don't see any signs of new growth. So I feel like we could go ahead and replace it. First, we're gonna dig a hole. Now we're gonna pull this out, give it a pop. Then you're gonna take your plant, plop it in the ground, make sure it's seated really, really nicely, cover it back up with mulch, and that's it. That's how you plant a native plant. You don't do anything else. You don't give it any fertilizer. You really just wanna put it in the native soil, leave it, it'll do everything else on its own. If it survives, great. Now it's going to be a thriving plant year after year. But in this first year, since this year is actually a drought, I will probably do a little bit of supplemental watering, but otherwise that's it, guys. Native plants are so wonderful. You don't need to add anything. You don't need to spray them. You don't need to fertilize them. I don't even do anything in this garden. It looks great and it's zero maintenance. So now it's starting to get a little bit late in the day. So we have a couple tasks that are specific to the evening. So first, let's go over into the greenhouse because I've got some strawberries that really need some attention. All right, so one of the things we're working on is actually getting some more perennials in the ground. Right here, I have some ever-bearing seascape strawberries that are just soaking in a little bit of water. It looks a little dirty because I put some worm castings in there to see if I could get some life onto the roots. And then what we have here are these two basins that we are going to be planting in. I already have some healthy plants in this one. I have a bunch of older plants. These are the ones that have been in this green stock for quite a while now that were up higher on the tier. And what I've done is I've moved them down to a slower tier because over the winter, water management became quite difficult and the bottom two rows fully got oversaturated. And that's what these two are right here. They got too wet and the strawberries basically rotted. So now what I'm going to do is show you how I'm going to refresh this and how I'm going to get some new bare root strawberries in. The first thing I want to do here is remove some of this overly wet soil. I don't want to put a bunch of fresh bare roots into soggy soil that previously had rot strawberries because they're probably going to just rot again. So what I'm going to do here is try to dump out like half the soil. So maybe like a third of the soil in total I've dumped out at this point. And now what we're going to do is add some of the Fox Farms Ocean Forest mix. Now I decided to use this one instead of Strawberry Fields this time because this one actually has a little bit of sand in it. So it's more of a perennial mix. It will not break down as fast. Hopefully it won't rot as quickly. So it should lead to some better strawberry growth this time around. At least that's what I'm thinking. So I'm gonna just clean this up a little bit, mix the soil in, and I'll show you guys how I plant. Now that we've mixed in a little bit of fresh soil, I'm also going to be mixing in some worm castings. This is just to help give a little bit of like microbial boost to the soil, a little bit of light feeding, something to activate this fresh soil with. At least that's how I like to think of worm castings, is that they're sort of alive. They have some level of life in them and they can help translate that into that new soil that we have going. Then next I'm going to be fertilizing with the berry tone. This is great for any type of berry, and anytime you add especially fresh soil, especially in the early part of the season, this is really where it's most crucial to fertilize. If you're gonna fertilize one time, do it in spring and forget everything else. It'll have the biggest impact on you for sure. So now what we're going to do is transplant some of these bare roots. What I'm going to do is grab the bare root plant, just like this. I'm gonna spread out the roots a little bit. I'm gonna take my hand and basically make a little channel in the area that I want to put this in. So just like that. Then I'm gonna put the roots along with my fingers, push down until the crown, which is where the roots meet the strawberry, is at the upper soil level. You never want to bury the crown. That will lead to rotting very, very quickly. So make sure that you are keeping that close to the surface. And just like that, we now have the roots spread out. One of the things I'm doing here is I'm making sure that each one of these individual bays is full of soil. I don't want it to slide away from the roots later on. So now what I'm going to do is backfill this section. And then we could place our dripper right on top of that spout. Now we have good soil contact, plenty of berries in the ground, and now we could do the next one. But if you get soil inside this, I would recommend actually cleaning that out. That way we just don't have any chances of it getting clogged up. So there we go, perfectly planted. This one's ready to go. Before reassembling the tower, I will go through and water each one of the cells just like this, because I want to make sure that the water is actually reaching the roots. Instead of using the system to water all the soil, I'm mostly targeting the edges here. So now for the most difficult part, which is getting this to actually line up right. But I find it much easier to get plants in when they're all disassembled like this. Now that we've got 30 strawberries back in the tower, we can move on to the next task. It's about an hour till sunset, and it is currently the perfect time, for me at least, to be applying beneficial nematodes. I have the 3-pack here of different species of nematodes. If you don't know what a beneficial nematode is that there are nematodes in general that live in our soil. There's good ones and there's bad ones. These are all the good ones because these are the ones that are predatory. So these ones are not attacking our plants. They're attacking other insects in the soil, such as other nematodes like the dreaded root knot nematode that's haunting my dreams, any sort of grub like white grubs, Japanese grubs, any of those things, cutworms, even flies. You could keep the fly population down in your garden through using something like nematodes, cutworms, cabbage loopers, you name it, anything in the soil that is haunting your plants, these can deal with. I've heard that they even deal with fungus gnats. I think they could deal with potato bugs and earwigs when they're in their young stage in the soil. So all across the board, I really hope this works because those are all the annoying pests. Now, this is not an insecticide really. It's a live thing that I'm applying in the garden to do the work for me. So I do feel like that is a little bit different than a broad spectrum thing that just literally kills everything. That is why they're called beneficial nematodes, because they are good. So the way that they come is that they come in a sort of powdered form. They've been refrigerated. So what we're going to do is mix them into some water. This is water that I warmed up to about 80 degrees. So we don't want it hot because that will kill them. And we want to just warm them up so that they're alive and ready to go into the soil. We're going to be applying them with one of these hose end sprayers. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but I have a whole video on this exact topic. The best time to apply nematodes is after it's rained. You want your soil to be saturated. You want it to be nice and wet so the nematodes can get in there, move around, attack other things, and live. They will die in dry soil. They will die in sunny conditions. They will die in warm conditions. So right now, springtime is literally the perfect time that you could do it. The best possible situation is that yesterday it rained, today it's overcast, and you're now applying them because then you don't have to worry about the sun. If it's not overcast, then you could do what I'm doing, which is waiting until about an hour before sunset to apply these. So what I'm going to do now is mix them into the water, then I'll get them into this can. So now that they're in this cup, what I'm going to do is mix it very, very vigorously. We want to break up any clumps. And one very important thing here is that you do not want to let them just sit in the water for a long time. They will eventually drown, especially if you're not oxygenating the water. So we want to move quickly once we're in this process, but it's not stressful. We don't have to worry about it that much. So what I'm going to do here is basically try to split this into thirds. I'm going to apply a third into this garden, a third into the other garden. Then the last third is going to be spread across random containers here, the chicken run, and anywhere else that I might see. The other thing I want to mention is that I took off the little filter screen on the bottom of this hose end sprayer because that will get jammed up with the nematodes. So now we're going to pour 1/3. And then what I'm going to do is put the bubble stone in here, and then I'm going to add some more water to this so I don't have to like stress about applying too much. I want it to be a nice large amount so I could just continuously spray everywhere I'm going. So now that I have my nematodes diluted, I have them in my sprayer, I could adjust how quickly they're being sprayed out. And now all I have to do is take my hose, and I want the spray to hit the soil. I want it to literally be blasting nematodes out of this thing through this directly into my soil. So I might even get closer. Like if I know that I'm in a bed here, I could actually get down into the soil here and push the nematodes straight into it. Now, a lot of you guys might not even have plants in the garden, and this is an even better reason to do this because it's much easier to apply when there isn't a giant cauliflower or cabbage blocking you. So now what I'm going to do is just go through the entire garden everywhere I can and spray this as best that I can. So last night I was out in the garden until about 7:30 spraying every single portion of my yard. I used every single bit of the nematodes that I purchased, made sure to get the garden extra good. I also got my front yard where I have a 400 garlic head bed, and that is a bed that's been getting dug up by raccoons a bunch. So the cool thing about nematodes is that you can't really see them. It's hard to say that they're working, but I'll know that it's working because if raccoons or possums or skunks, whatever the heck is digging up my front yard, looking for grubs amongst my garlic, they will stop. Because if the nematodes worked, they will literally consume the grubs from the inside out. So there won't be any signs of grubs. That is how you know that it's working. If you find no more grubs, no more digging, that's how I'm going to know. Now, the other thing I did is I sprayed all the side yard area, so areas where my dogs poop, all the chicken run area, because the poop will attract flies and the fly larvae haven't emerged yet for the nice warm day like today. So by spraying everything down with the nematodes, I'm also helping to control the fly population in addition to all the grubs and the root knot nematodes, cutworms, and all the other stuff that I'm trying to control. So we've done that. Now we need to continue on to our next tips to get our spring garden supercharged. And this year, I don't know about you guys, but for me here in San Diego, it's been a very dry drought year. So I am very much focused on saving water this year. So the next tip actually involves that bag back there, which is mulching. Now, obviously, all of you guys know that mulch is important for retaining water, but let me just sell to you how important it is to me this year. So far, we've had 4 inches of rain for the entire year. That is the rain year, which I think starts in October and ends basically in May. Now, all of our rain usually falls January, February, and March. Maybe into April if we get some more, but essentially right now I should be at 8 inches of rain and I'm at 4. So I'm at 50% in my rain totals, and we usually end the year at about 10 to 12 inches max. So I might end up with only 5 to 6 inches of total rain this year, or I might end up with just 4. There's no rain on the horizon forecast, so it is extremely critical that I get mulch down to save some water, but applying mulch will also cool your soil down. So let me show you the strategy that I'm using here. And I am applying straw because I still think it is the best possible mulch for garden beds. So here's our straw. I'm using the garden straw product, which is pre-chopped. And when I'm applying it, I am applying it in a not very thick layer. So if you look right here, this is probably equivalent to a 1/2 inch thick. Now, traditionally, when you are applying straw, you want to be closer to like 2 to 3 inches for maximum water retention. But even right here, you could tell that some of the soil is essentially visible. The reason why I'm doing this is because by applying some layer, I'm going to be capturing any evaporated water that comes up, hits the straw, re-precipitates, and then drops back down into the soil. At least that's the idea. Now, if I did make this 2 to 3 inches high, like it would be way up here, I'm also then going to be insulating the soil and stopping it from heating up in this early time of year. And now, while that's great for things like my onions that don't need severe heat right now, or like my cabbages and cauliflower, that's not going to be ideal for things like my peppers, my tomatoes, and other spring plants. So I don't want to go too crazy right now. Once I get into the end of the rain season, which I'd say is May, I'll go through the garden and apply another layer of mulch. But this little surface skim right here is going to do a lot to retain moisture, specifically at the near surface level, and should keep evaporation at least down by a significant amount. I have fully applied the straw mulch to this bed, including the pathways. It actually looks pretty good right now. And I think in total, I used about a 1/4 bag of one of these. And that makes sense because I'm not applying it very thick. So that's a 3 cubic foot bag of garden straw. And anytime you spread mulch, especially straw, which can blow around, I like to make sure I water it all in, at least at the very beginning. This does 2 different things. It stops it from blowing around because the water is now going to help it stick to itself and the soil, but it's also now making sure that the straw isn't going on dry. And if it goes on dry, I think at that point, it might act like a sponge and even suck a little bit of water out of the surface of your soil. So this is doing 2 things for us. It's stopping that little drying action that the straw might do, which I'm just making up, it's a theory. And it's for sure stopping the straw from blowing around. So I'm gonna go ahead and water this in, and we'll move on to the next tip. Before we continue on the next tip, I wanna mention that I have plans on doing an entire video on how to save water in the garden, and it's not going to be just apply thick mulch. That is just going to be one of the many methods that I am going to employ this year, especially once that dry season actually hits us in the May period. One of the things I wanna try to do, for example, is to turn a birdie's bed just like that into a sub-irrigated planter where it essentially has a bottom water reservoir to self-water itself. So that's just one of the things. I also plan on doing something with mushrooms in this patch to save water. I'm very excited to try that out. I actually spoke to Fascinated by Fungi, Dr. Gordon Walker. You may have seen him on Instagram and all of those other places, but he's a great mushroom guy and he gave me some really good ideas. So please share any other tips that you guys have that has worked for you or things that you are curious about trying, because I'm very much interested in saving a lot of water this year, not just for me, but for all of you guys at home too. So now let's for real move on to the next tip. Now that we're in spring, it's actually the right and perfect time to get some of your fresh garden compost spread in your garden. This is an alive sort of amendment. So when you're applying compost to your garden, I like to think of it as doing 2 different things for me. It's spreading life in the garden, hopefully beneficial life and not some sort of disease. And it's also spreading organic matter and a level of nutrients. All of this combined should help your plants grow better. Compost will also help with water retention. It'll also help with drainage if you're into a wet area. So compost is really one of those magical things, especially if you make it from your own garden from a large variety of different plant sources. You know this is going to have a lot of nutrients. So what I have here is 1/4 inch hardware cloth on a sifter. I'm just going to sift this up, and any of this big chunky stuff, I'm actually going to move into my active pile. That way it has all of these beneficial microbes all over these big chunks, and I could seed that into my current pile. Now, I did mention earlier this year that I plan on redoing my compost bin setup, and as you could see, I definitely need to. This is absolutely out of control. It's literally bursting at the seams. So maybe that'll happen later this week, but for now, let's get some compost and I'll show you how I apply it in the garden. So now what we have here is beautiful sifted compost. It's rich, it's dark, it smells wonderful. It shouldn't smell bad. If it smells bad, your compost is also bad. It should smell like, almost like a forest floor. You just kind of a very light, soily, organic smell. So what we're going to do now is move this into the garden. It's actually going to combine a few of our tips here. Here's the bed in question where I am going to be applying this compost to. Now you might see this bed very soon in a video about gophers, because I literally just dug up this entire bed, applied gopher netting, and put all of the soil back in, and that happened this morning. So what I'm going to do now is apply this compost to the surface. When you're applying compost, some people like to mix it in a little bit. Some people like to just top it and not mix. In this case, I'm just going to be topping it. So this is a 5-gallon bucket of compost. That is everything that, not everything that we sifted, but most of what we sifted from the wheelbarrow. I just didn't want to have to get the wheelbarrow into this tight area of the garden. So what I'm doing now is just spreading it out. And for context, this is a 4x4 bed. So 4x4 bed, 5 gallons of compost. And you'll see that essentially what we're left with here is like 1/2 inch layer of compost. Now that's not a lot, but if it's something that you apply every year and it's from your own compost, you know it's high quality, and it's going to make a big difference. Now, there is something very crucial here that we don't want to do, especially with a homemade compost. Now, there are different types of compost. I've actually done a full video on it. Some compost are considered mulching compost, and basically anytime I buy compost in bulk and it gets delivered, I treat that as a mulching compost. I don't treat it as valuable as something like this, which is a very bioactive, alive compost, because I produced it here in my own garden. From the soil is where all the nutrients came that is now returning to the garden. So it feels very good. Now, what we don't want to do is just walk away like this. If we walk away like this, the sun is going to beat down on this compost. It's going to dry it out. It's going to sterilize it. All of that beneficial life that's locked into this right now would get killed. That is maybe one of the reasons why you would want to actually mix this into the soil a little bit. So if we were to do that, what I would do is simply go like this. Is just lightly mix it into the very surface layer of my soil. I'm just using my hands and making like a little quarter turn with them. So what you're seeing now is some perlite is working its way up to the surface. That is showing that I'm mixing some of this compost down beneath it and pulling up the soil instead. So just like that, we're able to incorporate some of it into the soil, but it's kind of hard to fully incorporate it. So that's not a great solution. Basically, I don't know if that really did anything at all. I definitely see some more perlite. I probably mixed in like 20% of it. So let's move on to the real tip here, which is to always cover your compost with a mulch. So in this case, we are going back to the straw tip. And the reason why this is so important is that the straw is going to do a couple things. It's going to stop that actual sun from hitting the compost and baking it. It's going to help keep it a little bit more moist longer term, because the thing with compost is that a lot of people don't realize is that anything that's essentially 100% organic matter, if it fully dries out, it becomes hydrophobic. It's like when you have peat soil that fully dried out and you go to try to rehydrate it, it's dang near impossible. So this is going to help solve some of that issue as well with our compost. It's going to keep all of those beneficial life, the microbes, everything inside this compost alive and thriving, help work it down into the soil, and it's also going to save water in the long run. Now, I'm not entirely sure if this is true, but since this is a carbon source, the straw itself, any of the microbes in there might be able to even use some of the straw to help break down even further and provide more nutrients back to the soil, especially things like worms. They absolutely love straw. So if there are worms in this bed, which I know that there are, they'll come up, grab some compost, come back down and work that compost into the soil. Because they also really love the straw, they're gonna pull some of that down. It's going to help make this bed much more alive and much more able to thrive. Now that the straw mulch has been spread, the first thing we of course have to do is water it in. We wanna make sure that the compost is wet, the straw is wet, and that nothing is going to blow away and expose that compost to the harsh elements of the sun. So now that this is all nice and watered, that actually takes us into our next tip, which is that right now is a great time to do some direct seeding in the garden. A lot of times I talk about transplanting in the garden, but now at this point in the year, it's actually a time where I do a lot of direct seeding. The first one that I'm direct seeding today is actually going to be a bush bean. Now, the reason why now is a perfect time to direct seed beans, is because here in my garden, at least, it is time to transplant tomatoes. And if you don't know, tomatoes shouldn't really go out into the ground until the soil is up into that 60 or really even 65-degree range. And that is also the perfect temperature for beans. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to direct seed directly through this mulch and compost. All I'm going to do is take my bean, place it on the soil surface, and then with my finger, push it down until I hit dirt. Just like that, we are ready to go, and I could direct seed these beans. And I'm going to do it pretty densely. So what I'll do here is I'll actually just lay them out maybe like 3 inches, 4 inches apart. And then I'll come back through and push them all into the soil. This way I could see where all my beans are. I don't have to like figure out if I already did one there or not. And it's a lot easier to just go through and systematically punch them into the soil. So we're gonna do 1 row there, and then I'm going to step back a little bit, and I'm gonna do a slightly further spaced row, like 6 inches. That way things don't get too crowded here, and I still get plenty of bean plants. And then we're gonna offset the row. So in between 2 beans, I now have another, and we're gonna do 1 more row. This is going to be my first sowing of bush beans, so I'm gonna have 3 rows here, and that's going to produce quite heavily indeed. So now once these beans are actually up and growing and they reach about 6 inches, I'll start my next round of beans. That way I have a succession of beans going through this whole spring seedling. So let me point out my bean rows really quick. I've got 1 here, 1 there, and the 1 up front. So now all I have to do is take my finger, as I mentioned, plunge it down into the soil. Doesn't even matter if we get some straw in there at the same time. Straw doesn't really matter if it gets buried or not. It's not going to lock up any nutrients or anything like that. So we're just going to literally jam these right into the soil, and that's it. We'll come back through, we'll water it 1 more time to settle all the soil around this where I'm actually depressing these holes to make sure that it's not just like sitting on the surface. But that's pretty much it. Another fantastic plant to direct seed now in the garden, especially if it's warmed up where you guys are, is the sunflower. This is one of my favorites, the evening sun. I really like branching sunflowers because you get way more beauty out of them than just a single Mongolian giant or anything like that. So my tip for sunflowers is to always direct seed them. They have a taproot. They will successfully transplant just fine, but they won't be as vigorous, they won't be as tall, they won't produce as many side branches. So what we're going to do here is direct seed them in the ground here. Let me explain where I like to put them and why I put them where I put them. And we're back to familiar territory. This is that big bed that I applied that straw mulch entirely to. And so what we're going to do here is I'm going to be dropping a couple sunflowers right back here on this side. Now the reason why I'm doing it specifically right here is because the way that my garden is oriented, that way is north, this way is east. So what happens is that the sun rises over there, it comes up overhead, and then now pretty much at any point after 10 o'clock, it is essentially right in line with where I am. And that means that the sunflower is never going to cast a shadow into my main garden. If I were to put it, for example, like right here, it would actually throw a shadow on everything behind it. But the only thing I have behind it here is this giant Pride of Madeira, which will definitely not struggle from having a little bit of sunflower shade on it. So I'm going to let these get pretty big, so I'm not going to actually cram them in too much. I'm probably gonna do just 3 on this whole back line here. A couple other quick ones for you guys is corn. Right now, I would show you where I'm putting my corn, but I have literally no idea. I'm a little bit stressed about it because I don't think I budgeted for a spot for my corn, but it is a great time to get that in the ground, especially if you're in a short season and you really need to get that timing right. The other one is carrots. Carrots can be grown year round. They do taste better if you grow them in the colder parts of the year, like say summer into fall, winter. They would be better. They will definitely be sweeter, but you could definitely still grow them at this point in the year and get some tasty garden carrots. They just won't be as crazy sweet. Now the next one, it's kind of a obligate direct seed, I should say, and that is potatoes. So I will be starting some potatoes in grow bags pretty much today because I want to get those going before it gets too hot so I could get a nice tuber set. The only thing I'm going to be doing differently this year is I'm going for a large container. Last year I found that raised beds produced way more potatoes, and that's because I've always tried to shove them into like 5 and 10 gallon bags. This year I'm going with a 15 gallon bag. That should help me water them much better and should increase my yield dramatically. All right, let's take a quick look in the greenhouse now. Take a look at all of my tomatoes. I've got a crazy amount of peppers going this year. And the reason why I wanted to bring you guys in here is to remind you about companion plants. In particular for tomatoes, I like to always have some companion plants alongside them. My favorites are lettuce, just because it doesn't compete. It's not really doing anything for the tomatoes itself, but it's a great addition. Then we have French marigolds, which are great for tomatoes because they actually deter root knot nematodes. You've got alyssum, which is great for attracting pollinators, beneficial insects, things that will attack your tomato hornworms. And of course, basil, which can be good for some amount of pest prevention, but honestly, I'm just growing the basil so I could plant it with my tomatoes and make a wonderful salad. So just a couple companion plants that you don't want to forget, because once you get these tomatoes and peppers out there, you want them to be all alone. You want to make sure they have their companion. And actually, while we're in the greenhouse, let's talk really quickly about fertilizing our seedlings. This is a great time to do it once you've potted up. As soon as they have basically 2 to 4 true leaves, it's a good time to hit them with dilute fertilizer. Now, I won't dwell on this too much because I just posted a whole video about it, but basically just follow the instructions on the liquid fertilizer, but dilute it by about 1/4. Right now is also a great time to make sure you're fertilizing your fruit trees and things like your garlic that are ready to start growing a whole bunch now that spring has arrived. Here's a quick update on the strawberries that we planted just yesterday. You could see that all the new ones, the ones that were just bare roots, they have their leaves straight up in the air. They're open, which means that they are getting water. The roots have access to soil, and they are very, very likely to survive. If they were all sad and droopy, like this leaf was down here in the ground, then I would be concerned and thinking that basically they were not planted properly. But everyone is looking really good. It's looking really happy, and I know that they're gonna make it. All right, my friends, it's been 3 days since I originally went around, sprayed nematodes across my garden, planted strawberries, and did all sorts of other things. So I figured I'd give you guys a quick update. Yes, 3 days, there is something to show in an update, because in springtime, things happen quick, which is why it's so important that we get out there and we do some of this work. So let me give you a quick update in the greenhouse first. So first, let's kick it off with a strawberry tower update. The ones up top, they were more established. They were already in soil. They look fantastic. They have new flowers forming. They're very upright and happy. And actually, these 2 rows here are the ones that I did on camera of bare roots transplanted from a pot of water into soil, and they are thriving. You could tell that they are very happy because if you look at the leaves, they're upright. They're kind of like up and out like this. They're not hanging down and drooping. This is like nice and sturdy and tall. There's also all this new growth coming up. So if we take a look at any one of these, they're going to have that same characteristic of upright growth and new leaves well on the way. So that is fantastic to see. We should get fruit from this tower this year. They're ever-bearing strawberries that I put on. I think they were Seascape, so we should get, actually, I have plenty of bounty right now even. I should harvest these after this. But anyway, let's move on to the seedlings, or a quick update. I had 3 extras that I didn't know what to do with, so I just potted them into 4-inch 4 cells. So these are the same strawberry plants as the ones in the tower, and you can see that they also look good. This one maybe is a little suspect. It has a droopy leaf there, but there looks like there's new ones on the way, so even that one's going to make it. But I want to show you guys the tomatoes because these have grown incredibly since that one application of fertilizer that I showed you guys. If you take a look at this part right here, take a look at the center. See how it's light green? All of that is new growth. So I think this whole upper section here is all from the last time you saw them. So they look really wonderful, nice and sturdy, deep green color, no signs of disease. Very, very excited for these tomatoes. And I'm even more excited for the peppers because they look absolutely incredible. This is what happens when you add some amount of fertilizer to your seedlings as they're growing. They get very vigorous, nice dark green color, nice branching. These are gonna be fantastic peppers. So I already know I'm in for a good pepper year, and I think I'm going to be in for a good tomato year. And if I'm not, I'm going to force it because you guys know I love me some tomatoes. So now let's go take a look out there and see if there's anything to update. I could happily say that the update here is that all the straw is in place, which actually means something else. It means that there were no digging pests in the garden, which means that the nematodes probably worked, because otherwise what I've been seeing on a pretty regular basis right now, and this time of year especially, is that the raccoons, the possums, the skunks, they're going around looking for grubs to eat because it's spring, they're getting ready to breed, and they want as much food as they could possibly get. So if you take a look around, none of the straw has been really dug. It's all still in place. Even that bed that we flipped and had all this fresh soil, easy diggings, has no signs of digging. So fantastic to see. No beans yet. It's still too early for the beans to have sprouted, But the great news is that nobody has dug up my garden, and I think the nematodes are actually working. The thing that really gives me confidence about the nematodes working is that my garlic patch up here that I referenced has not been dug up since I've sprayed these nematodes. Now, nematodes carry bacteria, and once they sense something moving in the soil, like a grub breathing, they will beeline straight to that, dig itself in, and the bacteria gets into that grub and will literally kill it within, usually apparently just 24 hours. So in just 2 days, you could actually see the results of the nematodes working by lack of grub activity, or in this case, lack of activity of things digging up the grubs to eat them. So very happy to say, and I'm also very happy to see that this garlic is looking great. Now we have to take a look at our traumatic friend, the mint plant, but first I wanted to show you guys the nasturtium forest is still looking wonderful, and the Valencia smell incredible still. But if we come around here, let's go find our friend, the one that I tore into pieces, shredded basically literally, and replanted. Here's what we have. So here's the mint pot, same pot, no shenanigans here. This is the mint that I tore into tiny little pieces and replanted. And again, you could see that everything is upright. It's alive. Even these leaves right here, if you take a look at the angles of them, they're all standing tall and proud. So what that means is that everything in here is alive. It will now continue to spread through here without all of those old mint roots taking up space, stealing nutrients. And now this is basically going to be primed for an explosion of mint. So very happy to see that. And again, this is to encourage you guys that plants are not babies. You could be rough with them. You could tear them into pieces just like this mint, and it'll do just fine. So there you have it, guys. These are the things that I literally did in my garden to set myself up for the best possible success. And you could see in even just a few days, these things are already working and having meaningful results. Some things take time. For example, my blueberry back here, I had to make sure I fertilized in the fall to get it to produce this many berries. But even so, anything you do right now is going to have such tremendous impact later on in your season. Like those nematodes, for example, that's going to be paying me dividends for the rest of this year by keeping my soil healthier and dealing with some pest issues. So good luck out there in the garden. Let me know if any of these tips worked for you, or if there's something else that you make sure to do around this time of year. And I'll see you guys next time.